Hi, my name is Becky Mader, and this is my video presentation, Reflection and Evaluation of the Special Education Interviews. I interviewed three staff members. It was actually a lot of fun because these are three people that I've known for a long time and have worked with for a long time. We talk about school and special education a lot, but it was really a neat experience to actually ask them these very specific questions and look at how their answers related to each other. So the first person I interviewed is Joel Addis. He is a special education teacher in interrelated services at an elementary school, K-5. The next person that I interviewed is Debbie Russell. She's a paraprofessional, gifted services. And then I also interviewed an administrator, Sue Wilson. She was first a assistant principal at our middle school, and then she is currently the special education coordinator for our district. The first question, the child find procedures regarding public awareness, screening, and early identification. Mr. Addis and Mrs. Wilson had very similar answers. They both noted that we have things on our website, through social media, Facebook, Twitter, those kinds of things, and then also mailers. And Mrs. Wilson, our coordinator, noted that we send those out to all citizens in our community. Every mailbox gets a copy of that mailer. And those mailers advertise the Project Kids screening, which, if deficits or delays are suggested, then these children can enter into early childhood programs. Mrs. Wilson also noted several other screenings that we have available through Parents as Teachers in our district, and then Rainbows Tops, which is the Opportunity Project, and then Heart Springs is another resource in our community. Mrs. Russell was a little bit unsure, stating that it wasn't necessarily her role in this particular case, but she did note that if she sees something, a concern or a strength in a student that she's working with, she always makes that teacher aware if a need is noticed. And she does play a role in collecting data and anecdotal notes about the students. And I will note Mrs. Russell works in my classroom, and there are several students we've identified to receive gifted services because of her insight and her input. So I do, as a teacher, feel that she has a very important role in this. She just sees it a little bit differently than the special education teacher and the coordinator do. The most challenging part of their role, I'll start with Mr. Addis. He had said that he was continually working to meet significant needs with dwindling resources. And as a special education teacher myself, I can relate to that. We're constantly making adaptations and modifications and using our creativity to figure out what we can do to meet the needs of our students. And I can relate very much with his second comment also, is that being a special education teacher can feel somewhat lonely. Sometimes you're in a variety of different classrooms, you're in different buildings, sometimes your assignment changes year to year. And while you feel like a part of those classrooms and those schools, and it's kind of an advantage to work in so many different settings, you never really feel like you're wholly part of one of them. So it can be kind of a lonely role as the special education teacher. Mrs. Russell said the diversity in the student base was the biggest challenge for her. Working with students who come from many different cultures, and then also a variety of the cognitive levels that you're working with, you have to make a lot of accommodations and change your instruction to meet those needs. And then Mrs. Wilson said that communication is challenging. She said that she gets a lot of calls from parents, some good, some bad, but the parent requests are not always in line with the least restrictive environment, and that's a fine line. She said that she tries really hard to help parents understand that we don't want them to fail, but we do want to promote independence. So sometimes their requests aren't granted, but it is in the best interest of the student, and she's trying to ensure that everyone understands they're on the same page. Transition was another concern or challenge for her, helping teachers to trust when the students are going to move on to the next building that that program is also going to meet their needs, and that those teachers are also going to care as much as they do about the students. And then the next thing she noted was keeping everyone in compliance. She did emphasize that she knows that everyone tries their hardest and does their best to do a good job and focus on the students and what's best for them. But sometimes we stumble, and keeping everyone in compliance is a challenge for her in her role. And then the last thing she noted was finding teachers. We have many, many openings and no applicants for these openings. There's a lot of turnover in special education, and she noted that we are trying to convert a lot of general ed teachers into the special education roles because they're unable to find applicants. So they kind of look within and see if they can find someone who may be good in that position. The most rewarding part of their role, I love this, and all three of my interviewees answered with the students at the center. So you can see there in the middle, Mrs. Russell said, watching the kids succeed. And this was a picture that I put in there because she had suggested some flexible seating and alternative seating for one of the groups that she works with. And I know it's hard to see in that tiny picture, but all of those kids are smiling. And she had sent me that picture one day. And I know she's also talking about academic success and success with leadership and social emotional areas. But that to me was kind of one place where she was really looking to the kids and made a difference for them in their instruction. Mr. Addis said also when kids demonstrate the growth in academic soft skills and independence, and he really emphasized that, you know, sometimes it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, a lot of different interventions, and you persevere and you stick with it. And so when you see that they can demonstrate that skill without you, he felt very, very strongly that that was a high reward for him. And then successful collaboration with his colleagues was another thing that he really appreciates about his job. Mrs. Wilson said, seeing students smiling and happy, and that again kind of relates back to where I posted that picture there. Positive feedback from parents, and she said she's even gotten some positive feedback from some of her older students, and so that was really neat. And then convincing others that these students have abilities and seeing success in the community. She works a lot with the 18 to 21-year-old program where they're looking for jobs for these students out in the community and convincing them that they really do have abilities and that they really can be a productive member of our society. She feels that that is very rewarding. Advice on the supervision of special education staff. Mr. Addis said it's important to make sure they have the right training, find the resources, and also take the time to do it yourself. He felt like as a teacher, it's his responsibility to ensure that they do have the proper training. And then teach the expectations, skills, and strategies the same way that he would teach his students. And that can also model it for them so that they in turn work with the students in a similar way. Check in with them often, make sure that that communication is open, and then don't be afraid of those tough, constructive conversations. Mrs. Russell said that she was uncomfortable advising on this topic because she doesn't feel like she gives advice to her supervisor. She asks her supervisor for advice, and so she didn't really have a comfortable answer for that question. But she did say that she enjoys and appreciates bouncing ideas off of each other. She does like sharing her ideas with her supervisor, and it helps to build the knowledge base of both parties. And then Mrs. Wilson did say that finding someone that you can depend on to help you know if you're seeing good work. She mentioned observing the nurses or the speech pathologists, and she knows it's not her field. She's honest with them about the lack of expertise in that field, but if she can find someone that she trusts, even a friend or a colleague who can tell her the lingo or what she needs to know in order to see if she's seeing good work so that she can effectively supervise and evaluate those staff members. Trust and communication, she said, is important, and having open discussions about the goals. She said that one thing she always looks for, no matter the field, is to look for active engagement with the staff and the students. If the staff is making connections with the kids, then something good is going on in that room. How to work effectively with parents. Mr. Addis said consistent communication, and communication was brought up again with Mrs. Wilson also. She said it's important to hear their concerns, and then she asks for time to review. She wants to make sure that they've communicated with the other stakeholders and the other people involved, and then she always sets a deadline to get back with them. And if they're still not satisfied or if the problem's not been resolved, then she would have a meeting to look over that. And that kind of goes back to what Mr. Addis said about it can look different for each parent. He collaborates with them while developing the IEP, and he wants to ensure that they feel heard. That's exactly what Mrs. Wilson said first. Make sure you hear their concerns and let them share with you. Really listen to them. Mrs. Russell said it's really not her place to work with parents, and I think she's referring to around the community, you know, if parents ask her how's so-and-so doing or is so-and-so in your class, she's working very much confidentially and always deferring to that supervising teacher if parents are asking her for feedback or input on their students. How to work with regular education teachers. Mr. Addis said it's important to build trust through relationships, be consistent, reliable, dependable, be where you say you're going to be when you say you're going to be there, and that just makes it a lot easier to collaborate even when you don't agree. So if you build those relationships and those trusts first, it's a lot easier to get through those situations where you maybe are not on the same page. He also said it's important to be